Good morning and afternoon and evening, and welcome to the Climate Cafe Multi-Faith. We are talking today about nonviolent direct action, especially as it concerns youth, although this is intergenerational, and faith communities where, trying to understand sort of why is this happening and what could our youth be asking from us. As we talk about this, there's a real opportunity here to sort of dig into what is it that makes people nervous, maybe in our faith communities about this, and how can we hear the words of people who are engaged, young people especially, and what it might mean to them. So here is Victoria Wingell. Victoria is working currently with Oregon Wild as a champion of forests, especially old growth forests, and working as an organizer right now on a national campaign to protect forests. She too has an environmental degree. Her degree is from Pacific University. It is a degree in environmental policy, but she also has this special focus on grassroots dissent and societal change, which I really love about this is that she's willing to step up and engage and talk to people of all generations from all places to talk about forests, to talk about climate, to talk about this work, climate justice, climate change, and what we can do together that will benefit all, and especially our beautiful forests. So, and Victoria, I'm just so glad you're here. And I'm just going to let you take it from here.
Sure. Yeah. Hi, everyone. So I'm Victoria. Thank you so much for the introduction I've already had. I'm a forest and climate campaigner with Oregon Wild. And the main focus of my work is on the National Climate Forest Campaign. I'm working as a grassroots organizer. So we work with over 100 different groups across the country, asking for a durable rule that protects mature and old growth forests from logging. But before I got into that, I was also doing work opposing methanol refineries from popping up in communities. I was canvassing and doing grassroots outreach with Columbia Riverkeeper. And that was very much an intersectional issue where the proposal for these methanol refineries were putting nearby communities at risk, which is often the case when we're talking about climate issues. And so just being able to work with the community and spread awareness about these issues and really build up and foster that support for not only the environment, but the people who are living nearby. That's something that really means a lot to me. Also, when you're working on these issues, you work with a lot of different people who share these same passions. So there's a lot of community development that works within your organizing circle, and then you pass that on to folks and just kind of grow that bubble. So that's something that I really love about doing this work, just how human it is and how many different humans you meet. COVID kind of changed my trajectory. So now I'm with Oregon Wild. But I've also done some work with Extinction Rebellion, PDX, where we are also working on opposing crude oil transshipment facilities going through Portland, which, again, you might notice this is a theme here, also puts the community at risk. Lots of different, I guess there's different ways to take this on, different avenues you could go, whether it's direct outreach, whether it's direct action, lobbying. There's a ton of different ways to plug in, and I try to poke in wherever I can, wherever is most needed, and just kind of build up that experience. I am really invested in climate work. It's absolutely something that affects all people, whether folks accept that or not. It's something that has a greater impact on marginalized communities as well. So there's an element of social justice work that needs to be done here. And I think talking about direct action, nonviolent direct action, can be particularly tricky with many groups, as I'm sure you all know. And I think what is important to be mindful of with that is that there are real people who are at risk when we're talking about climate issues. For example, I'll tell a story about Extinction Rebellion and some of the work that they did before I was able to join. So they are mostly working on opposing Zenith Energy, which is a crude oil transshipment facility that runs through Portland, Oregon, right on a fault line. So super dangerous. It's in a liquefaction zone. If anything were to go wrong here, like the big earthquake that we all know is coming, that community is gone. It's gone. In addition to that, like we know greenhouse gas emissions that come from this facility will have impact on us all. It's a beautiful day in Portland right now. It's going to be 80 degrees this Friday. And like, while I'm loving the extension of summer, I do recognize that it's not normal. So that's something that I feel really passionate about, just being mindful that the people in these communities and all over the world that are experiencing the impacts of climate change, we really need to prioritize that over companies like Zenith Energy making a profit at everyone else's expense. Their profits come at a higher cost than they'd like to admit. And so I think what ignites non-violent direct action is really passion and a sense of survival for a lot of folks. And I think a lot of the pushback, I might be going into a tangent here, so feel free to slow me down. But there is quite a bit of pushback for this. And I think a lot of folks really search for, well, what is the direct effect that this tactic is having? And I don't believe that that is necessarily the way to look at it. I think there's just so many different pieces to this puzzle, and to really solve some of the most pressing issues of our time, we really need to look at it from many different angles and just validate the experiences of these people who are feeling that their homes and their lives are at risk and are willing to put more risk onto themselves to make a change and really fight for a better world, is something that is really important. And just recognizing that some of the biggest societal changes that we have gone through in terms of social justice haven't happened without at least an element of this at play. And so, yeah, I don't know. I think it's a really beautiful thing to see folks who are so passionate and engaged on these issues really like putting it all on the line. They mean that they want change, and they really are willing to put in the work for it. Yeah, that's my spiel.
So I'm going to offer a follow-up question, which is, what would you give advice for a baby nonviolent protesters? How do we get people like me, right, who care but aren't doing anything? Frankly, I mean, I wasn't. I'm sure everybody here is, but we know this problem. How do we do that? How do we? What would you tell folks? I think, sorry, that was rambling.
Oh, no, not at all. Yeah. So I think one thing that I hear a lot in the organizing world is being mindful of different tiers of engagement. You can't introduce an issue in the world to someone and then ask them to lock themselves down to the train tracks the next day with you, right? You really have to build up that engagement over time. So taking small steps and just having conversations with them, really building up that trust, is something that's so important. Before any of these direct actions take place where folks are intentionally being arrested to bring attention to their cause, affinity groups will usually form, and it's a tighter circle of folks who you really trust, who you know well, who you care about, and you look out for each other. And so just having that community is so meaningful in this work. You can't just go out with a bunch of strangers and, throw caution to the wind and hope everything will work out. It may even undermine your cause if everyone is not on the same page. So there are steps along the path. And I mean, I didn't jump into that when I first got into this field either. It takes time. You have to be comfortable with your message and with the people who are supporting that message, and then the people in your smaller circle who you're really going to work together to get through it. And I guess like another key part of that is this can sometimes be really heavy work. Like if you've gotten all the way to that tier that you are willing to get arrested, you're doing it because you know it matters, and it hurts to do nothing about it and just watch the world fall apart, right? So having a group of friends to lean on and kind of carry each other through the times that it's hard to carry this weight, and then be there next to each other, empowering each other when it is time to take action. It's a really beautiful thing. So I guess I would say the key takeaway is build relationships with people who are also on the same page about these issues. Trust who you're with, stand firm in your beliefs, and, just learn as much as you can before actually taking that step. Just prepare, and surround yourself with good people, and everything will work out.
Another follow-up question. So you're on a march, and you got your signs and all that, and you're passing, some of these sections in their downtown sections will have a couple of different churches, maybe a synagogue, an Islamic center. You're walking past these faith communities, these institutional buildings. There you are, and you're trying to be visible, right? What would you hope the response would be, or what would you hope could happen from those buildings that you're passing full of people and community? What would you hope for? What would you wish for? What would you say to them?
Yeah. I would wish for their support. Absolutely. Lots of people can show that support in different ways by like honking when they drive by or cheering from their windows. And that always feels really good. But I think, so normally, a march will happen in an area where it matters. It's not going to be just a random place. So I'll go back to that Zenith example. We went right to Zenith for our actions there because it makes sense. And so what we did first was reach out to the local community who lived nearby, let them know what was happening, let them know why we were doing this, and just have conversations with them. So we didn't just blindside them with, oh, we're marching through your neighborhood now, and here we are, and taking on your issue that affects you. We very much had them as part of the conversation too. So doing outreach ahead of time and building up that support is super helpful and can help solidify that support when you're actually on the ground. And you might even see them out there with you, which is always great.
Tribal identities. Our tribal identities really want us to say no to all of this. Fossil fuels are not the problem. It's good. We don't want to listen to you, whatever. Have you, in your work, when you encounter that, do you have like a trick or something you do? Do you just walk away figuring, okay, this isn't going to be a good use of my time? Or do you have something kind of in your pocket that you've developed that you bring out to have that in that moment?
Yeah, it's tough. I think it definitely requires trial and error and experience with talking to a lot of different people with differing views before you know when it's time to, just move on to the next. I guess, so when I was in school and when I was studying protest and dissent, we read Rules for Radicals by Saul Alinsky. It's really good, really dives into strategy for organizing. And one key takeaway is you really can't put all of your eggs in the basket of changing people's minds. It is impossible. And sometimes you might even really solidify their views, even when they're opposing. So you really do need to know when to walk away, when you think you might be able to get somewhere with them, where you can find something to connect on and focus on that, and when it's just not worthwhile. One thing to keep in mind is there are so many people who will agree with you. It's just a matter of finding them. And so sometimes putting your energy into that can be more meaningful and more effective. But one example, when I was canvassing for Columbia Riverkeeper and we were working on opposing the fracked gas refinery, one thing from the right side of the political spectrum would really focus on is, well, what about all the jobs that this is going to create? And I'm sure you've heard that plenty of times. And that is something that's important. Like, people's paychecks matter. So rather than focusing on the environmental impacts, which is something that was most meaningful to me, I really pushed back on that idea that this would create new jobs. The reality of the project was a bit different. A lot of these jobs were going to be taking place overseas or just be temporary, couple months while they built the facility. And then, not exactly the job creator that the right would hope for, right? So really focusing on that and finding something that we can connect on could actually sway some opinions on the project, but not always, you know. And if you can't find something to connect on, move on, find your friends, work with them, build each other up rather than, you know, trying to sway someone who's unmovable.
I think that was really well said. And there's a few comments in the chat also just kind of up behind that. And one of the things that, as we're talking about nonviolent direct action and kind of I'm recognizing in it as we plan this, that because of me, because I'm sort of hosting, my lens is very much the experience of being told not to do it. And there are lots of folks out there who grew up actually with the imperative that you have to. Communities of color, especially, where they have support often within churches and faith communities because they really see this as good, just, and godly work. And so just bringing that into the room as well. So go ahead, Victoria.
Yeah, I guess one thing that I'll add on to that is like, I totally want to echo what William just said, that a lot of this is not a choice for a lot of groups. And being mindful of your comfort level too is important. You don't have to be locking down with them, right? But marching with them, being there, bearing witness and showing support and being a friend after any fallout arises, if there are arrests made, just being there and continuing to be there and showing support is super, super meaningful as well. Yeah.